Alright, as you can see, we've got a Jeep in the shop tonight. It's having a little bit of problem. I believe it's trying to boil the fuel and vapor lock. Seems to be a very common problem with these Jeeps. We'll dive into it a little more, but it's having a problem. It wants to stumble and run really rough when it's only in hot weather. Right now it's about 50 degrees outside. It runs fine, but we're going to take it and see if we can put some heat barrier products on it to try to eliminate this situation. So let's jump in here, take us a little drive, get everything warmed up, and we'll get us a base reading of what everything is temperature wise, and then we'll take it back out once we've applied the heat barrier stuff and see what the temperature reads in. So y'all come along and let's see if we can get this Jeep fixed. Alright, we're rolling down the road here about 25-30 mile an hour. Just taking it out to get everything warmed up. It's had like I said, it's had a problem with it not overheating, but there's just a lot of excessive heat in the engine bay. And these Jeeps, they don't have a big engine bay to start with, and not a lot of air gets in there and helps get the hot air out. And this Jeep here, it's an 04. It's got the 4.0 6-cylinder and 5-speed transmission. Very, very good combination. A lot of fellers like them. But like I said before, this thing, it's trying to vapor lock, and the way these Jeep engines are made, these inline sixes, you've got your exhaust, your intake manifold, and your fuel rail all on the same side. And all it's doing, all that's just getting heat soaked. Your intake, your fuel rail, everything. And it's just not good, because you want your fuel to be as cool as possible. And from the factory, these are supposed to have heat shields on top of the exhaust manifold and on top of the intake manifold. Well, like I said, it's a 2004. Well, all that's gone. It's kind of like a little, not a paper heat shield or anything like that, but something similar. And it's done wore off. It's done got old and probably deteriorated and fell off, or somebody's took it off if they've ever worked on this engine before. Thought, well, ain't no point in putting that back on. Wrong. So I'm gonna continue driving here back to the shop, and I'll catch up with you when we're back, and we'll start working on this thing. Alright, here we go. Let's see. Right there on the intake, you can see that 80, 87, about 87 degrees. And now the big thing is your fuel rail. You can see we're on it right there, and that fuel rail, 166 degrees. That's not good. And right there you can see 154, 156. Now the big thing is, if you can see down here, alright, I'm right on the exhaust. You're right at 200, right at about 240 what it was reading. Now obviously that's going to be hot no matter what, but all that's going straight up right under the intake, and it's not good. So what a lot of guys will do, they'll actually, some of them will put holes in their hood to help the air come out. But you can see how tiny this engine bay is. I mean, it's just a Jeep TJ. So, and that's relatively a big motor for what the Jeep is. So we'll take it and try to get us some heat shield put in here, and the stuff's from D.E.I, so we'll see what it'll do. Let's go over here at the table and see what we got. All right, here's the kit right out of the box. Jeep fuel rail and injector cover kit. And here's what you get. You've got a new heat shield that goes under the fuel rail on top of the intake manifold. Ours still has one, but it's old, and it's seen a lot of miles, and it's seen a lot of heat, so it's wore out. It's it's not a bad thing to replace it. Right here are your individual injector covers to help keep the fuel cool and keep your injectors from possibly sticking, just to help keep them cool. And then right here is your heat shield for your fuel rail. Like I said, this is all from D.E.I, not Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, but Design Engineering Incorporated. And then right here, they give you the directions. Now, I will say, they give you some pretty good instructions. Full color, and they're pretty good instructions. But one thing that we are not going to do, it says to pull the fuel rail, and while you've got it out, go ahead and replace your O-rings on your injectors. Well, the thing is with that, if you don't have a problem with it, leave it alone. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I have seen some guys that installed this exact kit. What they done is they just slit this heat shield right here, just slid it to where they could get it wrapped around the injectors, and that was all they done. Works just fine. We're just trying to get the majority of the heat away from everything, because in all reality, heat can still get around these holes, no matter if this is slid or not. So heat can still get around it if it wants to, but this is going to take the majority of it away. So that just helps save an extra step, and anytime you pull them out, even though they give you new O-rings, you can rip one, you could pull on something and not mean to and tear something else up. So with that there, like I said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So let's dive into this thing and get this took care of. Alright, you're going to start by taking your air intake off, and then your throttle linkage and the bracket that goes with that. And what I like to do is, once you get all that off, go ahead and put your bolts back in. That way you don't lose them or nothing like that. And then you're going to start taking your wiring harness there off, because you've got to slip the heat shield underneath that, and it gets sandwiched on. There's some studs there. Now, one thing coming up, you've got to trim and slit this heat shield so it'll fit around one of the injectors, as you see right here. No big deal, just cut that out. It'll go right around it, no problem. Now you've got to loosen up the tabs of the fuel rail so you can slip the heat shield through it. You can see the little slits in it right there. I'll show it a little better here in just a minute. But those have to slip up through there so you can actually wrap it around the fuel rail. And there's a piece of the fuel rail in the center that I had to make a slit to go around it, because they didn't provide one in the heat shield from the factory. But just slip that up through there and you'll have it good to go. Be no problem. Now, one thing I done was, I've got these certain needle nose pliers that go out and kind of wrap around to make like a set of pinchers, and those really come in handy getting this thing snaked around this fuel rail and even the injectors, because if your fingers are on the big side, it's hard to get down in there and grab a hold of it. So those pliers, I strongly suggest invest in a set of those. It made this job a whole lot easier. And as you can see, once you get it snaked around, just start rolling it around. All this is Velcro, so it goes together pretty easy. Just wrap it around and get it tight, and then just reinstall all your hardware, and then you can start putting your heat shield pieces around your injectors. Same thing here with the needle nose pliers. Made the job a whole lot easier. Alright, as you can see, that's not a terrible job. You just got to make a few modifications if you don't want to pull the fuel rail and your injectors and change out your O-rings or anything like that. But it can be done without doing that. Like I said, the way this stuff wraps around, those little slits are not going to be a problem. They'll be completely fine. And as you can see, a couple of the injectors was a little difficult to get those wrapped around, but it's doable. This is by far the easiest way to do it and the quickest. I've got a little over 30 minutes in doing this whole thing right here. So it's not a terrible job. As you've seen, the main heat shield, the first one I put in, I had to trim it to go around one of the injectors. But here again, that won't hurt nothing. There's a lot more heat shield here than what I took out. All it's left to do is get the throttle bracket put back on, hook all the linkage up, put the air intake back on. It's just simple stuff. And we'll take it for a drive and see how it does. And really won't be able to tell nothing right now this time of year, because like I said, it's 50 degrees outside, and during the winter this thing runs fine. But when it starts getting 65, 70 degree weather, that's when you start seeing a problem with this. So when summertime rolls around and it's 80, 90 degrees, we'll get to see if this stuff is actually good and see if it's what they say it is. So I'm gonna get this button back up, take it for a drive. We'll see if we see any changes from when we first started. I'll let you know what happens. All right, one more little project we're going to do on this tonight before I take it out. And probably wait till daylight to take it back out, and I'll run the same route that I done before. That way it gets the same amount of time on it to heat soak and everything. So we'll see about that. But one other thing we're going to do is this Jeep, everybody knows Jeeps are bad to rust out. Well, this one's no exception. And it's got some bad rust here in the fenders. Now, this stuff here, it's called rust mort from SEM. Now, it's not a permanent fix, but it does slow it down and stop some of the rust. And I've used this on a few vehicles, and so far I'm very pleased with the product. All I do is take it, pour it in a little cup. You can spray this on, you can wipe it on, you can do whatever you want, however it takes to get it on the panel that you're working on. But I like this. Pour it in a cup, take a paintbrush. That way you can really get down in there and get this stuff in all the little tight places. And you can really get good coverage. And then what you do, you got to let this set at least 24 hours to help convert the rust back and to somewhat stop it. Now, I have let this sit 24 hours. I've let it sit 48 hours. and sometimes 48 hours is better. Now you can pour this right on this panel, and as you can see, there's paint still on here. It will not hurt this paint. All it does is attack that rust. It will not hurt this paint. I was skeptical when I first got the product, but it works. It will not touch this paint. It done a real good job of converting the rust, and what it does, it turns it black. It goes on. It's a little bit of a blue, and it's a muriatic acid base. You can smell it really, really strong when you open the bottle, and it just attacks that rust, but it will not touch the paint. It will not hurt it. And what I do is let it set 24 to 48 hours, and then I come back, and you're supposed to go back over with water. I usually use a spray bottle, and I'll get everything wet down, and then I'll go back with brake cleaner and flood the area, because brake cleaner evaporates quick. So you go in here, you get all that water out with the brake cleaner, and then you don't have to worry about it. That'll evaporate up, you're good to go. And you can paint over it, whatever you want to do. Now, you can see, all I do is put a little bit in a cup. This stuff, the old saying, little dab will do you. Well, that's how this is. And the thing about it is, you can never put this back in here, because then you contaminate the rest of it. So just pour you a little bit out, and if you need more, pour more in. But all you do, take your paintbrush, swirl her around in there, get her loaded up good, and just start going to town on it. Do that right there. You know, we're back to doing Bob Ross stuff here. You can put a little bit over here, put a little bit over here, a little bit there. Remember, a little dab will do you. And now, let that sit. Like I said, we'll come back in 24 to 48 hours. See what it looks like. All right, it's been roughly 48 hours since we applied the rust converter. And you can see it has turned some of it black. It just slows it down, and some cases it will stop it. But this right here is ready to paint over if you want to, which I just done this on this to try to keep it from spreading anymore. This Jeep will have to get a new fender, actually both front fenders. Now I'm going to show you how to neutralize this to where you can paint over it, do whatever. Like I said, this is going to need new fenders. I just done it to try to help stop the spread of it. So let me get you set up so you can see this. Alright, right here's all you're going to have to need. I use this waterless wash from Meguiar's. It says to use water, but you can use this. Spray it down with this. This will neutralize the rust converter, and then come back with some sort of brake clean and just flood the area and get it cleaned up, and then just wipe off the excess on the paint and everything with a paper towel. That's all you need. Just take your waterless wash or just water in a squirt bottle and just go over the whole thing and clean it. Now, take your paper towel, go ahead and clean this up. Now you see, you can get, the paper towel is used for here on the paint just to get everything, because you can't get this down in here. So that is what the brake clean's for. Take it, and then just flood it. And then that will evaporate up. Just go ahead and wipe your excess. And there you go. That is how to treat that and to get it all cleaned up. Alright, now that we've got the rust took care of and everything, we've got our heat shield on. So what do you say, let's take this thing for a drive and see if the heat shield actually works, see if we can see any kind of difference. The thing about it, you're not going to know a whole lot of difference until you get out and drive it when it's warmer. So we'll have to check back with the owner of this Jeep and see if it does fix it. But we can take a little temperature gun and check a few spots to see if there's any difference. The outside of where the heat shield's at will probably be, don't be surprised if it's still up there like it was, but underneath should be a lot cooler. Now, obviously, if the outside is dramatically cooler than it was before, then you know the inside is. Let's get the hood down on this thing and take it for a drive. Alright, we're out here on our test drive. It's actually a good bit warmer today than it was the other day. The other day it was 50 at best. Today it's upper 60s, so this thing should heat up a lot quicker, and that will help with seeing if this stuff actually works. We're just cruising along here about 30-ish. Yeah, this thing runs really good, and it's only got 130,000 miles on it, but from everything I've seen, this is a pretty common problem on these Jeeps. Just gets a lot of heat soak, and the only other solution that may be available, wrapping the factory exhaust manifold on this. The good thing about this being a 04, the factory manifold is very similar to a header, so it would be relatively easy to wrap, so we can keep a lot of heat away from underneath like that. The only other thing that I've seen other fellers do is cut holes in the hood, and I don't think the owner of this Jeep wants to do that, so that's pretty much out. And I'm taking the same route that I done the other day, so that way it'll have the same amount of time to heat soak and do all that stuff. So I'm gonna finish this out and meet y'all back at the shop. We'll see what this see if this heat shield actually works. See you in a minute. Alright, we're back from our test drive. Let's see. You probably still won't be able to. Look there. If you can see it. That fuel rail is down to 120 to 125. There was 140. 96. 111. 120. 107. Now, that heat shield, 134, which now remember the old one, this part here wasn't there. And then these injectors, $93, $92. It seems to be working. Like I said, you won't really know if it's working until you get it out into the heat and see if it's going to spit and sputter and do all that. So once summer rolls around and it gets 80s, 90s, then we'll really know if this works. But there's some signs that it's working, so we'll just have to check back and see at a later time. But I hope that if you're looking at doing this to your Jeep, hopefully I made it pretty easy to see how to put it on, and that it is pretty easy to put on. It's not a big deal. So I think we're going to button this up and get it back to the owner and get ready for the next video, whatever it may be. So thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.